Hey y'all, it's your girl D back with another video. This is a longer book review video with a bonus review at the end if you get through this full video. So y'all stay tuned for this last video of 2024. So I'm going to be doing these reviews by genre, or at least how I think they fit together in the scope of things, and I have plenty of notes, y'all, so don't mind me with that. But the first book review that I'm going to be looking at is Sociable by Rebecca Harrington, read by Patricia Santomaso. So the genre of this book is satire, humor, comedy, and I picked this book. I did a random search on my library app that I have, and this popped up. I like the book cover, so I was like, let me go ahead and read it. So here's a synopsis, y'all. Eleanor is an aspiring journalist who moves from Chicago to New York to pursue her dream of becoming a pro writer. She has a horrible relationship with a spoiled yuppie named Mike. And you know, it's just basically going through her life when she's going through working a dead-end job as a nanny. I believe she was working as a nanny, yeah. And so this book to me started out really slow. The beginning of the book was kind of boring, and right off the bat I was like, okay, I'm gonna give this book a 3 because it's kind of boring-ish. But as you move through the parts of her life, once you start getting to where she kind of starts, you know, growing and becoming who she wanted to become, the book started actually getting interesting and the humor started shining through. So I ended up changing my rating for this book to a 3.5. So the main character, Eleanor, she's a nice girl. You know, she's young, she's trying to figure out her life, but I found that her need for validation and all the time, and her anxiety, like, she was really obnoxious because she had anxiety, and she always had this constant need for kind of validation. So honestly, I did find that relatable, so that's why I'm like that is obnoxious to do that. So I can relate. Like, when you have anxiety, you don't really understand that you're coming off in a certain way, so I can relate to that. There was also a part in the book where she was at, like, meeting these people, and she knew one of the guys from school, and he did not even know her. He was like, who? He was like, he knew her boyfriend, but he didn't know her, and they were in the same class. And I found that be happening in real life too, though, because you be knowing somebody and they don't know you, even though they met you before they met somebody else, and that ain't right, y'all. But Sociable, it started getting really interesting when she got her editorial job. She was like a social media manager type of thing, where she was kind of writing for a publication like a BuzzFeed, where they have like little quizzes and little stuff like that. So that's the basis for the job that she had. So everybody in the office is always pretending to do like important stuff, which I'm like, this is so relatable. If you work in the office, you already know half the people ain't got no work to do. Like, come on now, y'all ain't got no work to do. It's just that simple. But Eleanor, I think she was really relatable, and that's why I really kind of gave this book a little bit more of a rating. But she is insecure. She also lacks the ability to self-reflect, and that's kind of what makes it so funny. She's also in an unsupportive relationship where the guy's like trying to, in a way, gaslight her into not focusing on her own goals, and that's why I feel like she couldn't, in the beginning, she couldn't make it, like, because she was just like supporting this guy and he's like all about him. And then towards the end, he tried to use her to get a position at the job that he said wasn't nothing because his job was closing down. So that's how real life be, y'all. And you already know, some of y'all have probably experienced people like that, where they'll down talk your achievements, but then when they need you, all of a sudden it's like they're in your face. So all throughout the story though, I was like, this hoe is crazy. Because her friend circle was just as toxic. And I mean, it's New York. And I mean, when you're young and when you have like, you can't judge people. And I feel like Eleanor was like judgy. And I feel like I can relate to that because, like, if you're somebody who's like a perfectionist or has anxiety or has OCD or any of those conditions, you know what I'm talking about. But I learned something from this book. And one of the things I learned was don't give unsolicited advice because hoes are not going to do what you suggest to do. They're going to do what they want to do anyway. So this is a life lesson. If you're like me, I'm like that. This is why I found this book so interesting after I read it and got through some of the parts. I was like, don't give nobody advice that's unsolicited. They didn't ask you for all that. Just mind your business. And that's it, that's all. So this book is a 3.5 because I didn't like it, I didn't hate it. But it starts off slow, and that's what kind of didn't, if I didn't finish it, I wouldn't have known it was a good book. So I'm gonna give it a 3.5, and we're gonna move on to the next series of books that I'm going to be talking about are going to be like coming of age books that are all by Black writers. So y'all stay tuned for this. If you're looking for some young adult genre to read, recommend to your young people, these are some good books. So the three that I read were Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry, Black Kids, and then King and the Dragonflies. So I'm going to start with King and the Dragonflies. That was by Kason Calendar. Again, it's a young adult. They deal with a lot of heavy themes like LGBTQ issues, toxic masculinity, trauma, child abuse, and racism. And y'all, so the synopsis for this is the 12-year-old boy named Kingston King James is trying to navigate life, issues like death, queer identity, racism, and abuse in Louisiana. So his older brother had passed away, and he is kind of trying to go through that trauma of loss, dealing with that. And then on the other hand, he has a friend that is queer and is having a hard time with that as well, and he is also battling with those thoughts as well. So I like this book because of the modern relatability to it. Young people can see themselves in these issues, like if they're dealing with LGBTQ identity crises, things like that, trying to figure out who they are. And I think a lot of these issues come up because, you know, the parents don't understand, you know, the young boy that is accused of being gay or queer is abused at home, and so people don't realize that that's going on. And then on top of that, he's coming from a racist home, so you're already coming from a bigoted family and you're queer, so that does not work out. So these two young people, they try to run away from home and try to figure out their identities that way. And in the end, the resolve is they're not, I guess they're accepted. They're accepted by a family. I think it's more so King's family than the other young man's family. But I like that there's modern relatability. You have issues that are affecting people, such as the LGBTQ, racism, dealing with trauma, how to process loss even. And this is things that young people will deal with. And it's good to see it in literature. You know, a lot of times I think movies and things like to sugarcoat, so literature can be a little bit more raw of a way to deal with life issues for real. The only thing I didn't like about this book was when they compared the issues of racism to queer identity, right? Because, and the author actually kind of addresses this through the main character. So, you know, he obviously the writer is a black individual, so they're addressing it through the main character. But I've always had this myself, like queer identity and racism are not the same, but they're the same because it's a prejudice. So prejudice is prejudice, but on the one hand, as a person that's black, you can't quite hide your black identity. So it's easier to hide. Some people can't hide their queerness either because of how their mannerisms and things like that, which I understand. But when it comes to black identity, you cannot hide that. So I like that the author did address that. I gave this book a 4.0 because of the storytelling. I really liked the storytelling. I really liked, I kind of visualized these young people going through their day-to-day. Like when I read a story, I'm visualizing what they're going through, and I could really clearly visualize and relate to this person, this young person, even though it's a fictional character. So 4.0 for that. And let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the next coming of age story that I read was Black Kids by Christina Hammonds Reed. The genre is like a historical fiction. It takes place during the 1992 LA race riots. So the synopsis is Ashley is a well-to-do black girl navigating life in LA, dealing with white friends, self-image, and the normal angst of high school. She finds out some family secrets, thinks about herself, and embraces her blackness. So this book is a 5 right away. I'm gonna tell y'all right now. The themes that they come across are race, classism. These may feel sensitive for young readers, so just be aware, but it's not too brash or too harsh. It's just what it is. It's just these issues that are coming up as our protagonist is dealing with it. So let me start by saying I loved the narrator, Kiersey Clemens. I love her inflections, the way she tells the story, and it's like the nonchalance of the storytelling. It makes it feel like you're like listening to a friend. I don't know. You're just like with your homegirl chilling. So, y'all, that's one of the reasons I gave it a 5 out of 5, because I love the way the narrator told the story. And the things that Ashley and her friends get into, these are things that I would have always like envisioned what growing up in like LA would be like. So like they break into like somebody's house and go to the pool, or even just like back in the day, y'all remember like X Games and stuff. Like I would just think like just like rollerblading along Venice Beach, skipping school and stuff like that, to do things like that. So it's very LA. So when we're getting into the story, Ashley, because of her upbringing, is kind of oblivious to her blackness, as a lot of people who've grown up in the suburbs or just grown up with that mindset kind of feel. Like you feel a disconnect from blackness, even though there's some things you might listen to music, you might watch BT, you might do, certain things, and you understand that you're black, but your blackness has been kind of, in ways, watered down. I don't know. It's not really watered down, but it just is. You experience blackness differently. And she got what we call in the black community her Negro wake-up call, unfortunately, because of some disagreement and some rigmarole business, and she got her wake-up call, and one of her quote-unquote friends dropped the hard R and word, and it's relatable. And when you're growing up in primarily white spaces as a black person, even though she is wealthy with a nanny, she's removed from stereotypes of Black people, but her existence is still Black, and it's not any more or any less Black, especially in this society. There was a point in the book where Ashley was talking about she didn't know how to feel she didn't know how to feel, and that's a very relatable thing. Sometimes in certain circumstances, as Black people in primarily white spaces, or in, even in other POC spaces, as a Black person, sometimes you don't know how to be, how to just feel. There's another point in the book where her grandmother pulls her aside and talks to her about how she is a representation of other Black people when she is in the world. And a lot of us feel like that. Like, if you've gone to college, if you've worked in corporate America, you are the face of Blackness. Some of these people have never interacted with Black people outside of work, and they just latch onto the idea of one way of Blackness. In their mind, Black people are the stereotype. So you, as a person that's not the stereotype, sometimes they can't wrap their mind around that, and that is so hard to uphold as a person. You're upholding a whole race. Like, that doesn't make any sense. There's another quote that the author talks about to the main character, Ashley. She says, sometimes, I'm paraphrasing this, but she says, oftentimes we hate the people we love, and we love the people we're supposed to hate. And that was so real, y'all, because a lot of us go about life, sometimes we're angry at our families, we're angry at our parents, we're angry at our circumstance, and we attach ourselves to other, like, okay, for example, if you're a Black person who grew up in weeb culture, sometimes I think a lot of us try to escape. It's not even escaping, but it's like you're trying to escape the stereotypes of Blackness, but you're still going to be Black. And we try to latch onto other things to prove, in a way, that we're not like this Black person or that Black person. And it's like, we are all Black. And I've gone through this as a Black person growing up in the suburbs. You go through these identity issues of like, what does this mean? Am I not Black enough? Am I not this enough? And it's like, no, you're still Black. You still have Black experiences, and we can still relate on that alone. But we don't have to have a stereotype of the Black mindset. And I think a lot of the stuff that is stereotypes, people have shown it to us so that we subconsciously digest that as who we're supposed to be, and that doesn't mean that's who we're supposed to be. And sometimes it's okay to be ratchet, and sometimes it's okay to be ghetto, and sometimes it's okay to just be yourself, whoever you want to be. If you want to be, that doesn't make you dumb, that doesn't make you not smart, that doesn't make you not intelligent. It's just a different way of living. And a lot of us who grew up in suburbs or grew up in sheltered environments, we could use some street smarts. We could use some understanding of stereotypical Black life, and we can use that in our everyday lives just as much as we can influence people who are quote unquote stereotypically Black to elevate themselves with what their knowledge, because a lot of them have good entrepreneurial skills too. A lot of us that are ghetto-ish, whatever they want to call it, hood, a lot of them are entrepreneurial, and that's how people in the hood survive. They're entrepreneurs. They come up with business ideas. They hustle. They sell stuff. That's not a bad thing. It's just people have made us think that we're doing something wrong when we're in the hood because of our circumstance. No, we're actually pretty creative on surviving. So that's what I took away from this book. But I love this book. Y'all go out and get it. I love the cover too, so that's one thing that drew me into it. I love the cover art, and for the audiobook, I love the narrator. Again, the narrator's name was, what's her name? What's her name? What's her name? Kiersey Clemens. If I ever find anything else that she reads, I'm listening to it because her voice is so good. I don't know, her storytelling way, it puts you in the scene. I don't know what to say, but y'all get the book, Black Kids. And also, I loved at the end how she kind of embraced her blackness and got her black friends together, and she felt really good about that. I think the protagonist Ashley felt really good about that. So that's Black Kids. So the last coming of age book that I read for 2024 was Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Godfrey. So the main characters are Quinn and Carter. Quinn, again, like the previous book that I reviewed, Quinn grew up well-to-do. Carter, not so much. So Quinn grows up well-to-do, and she has this idea. It's a coming of age. It deals with topics of race, adolescent relationships, bullying, and dysfunctional family dynamics. But in this book, there's the idea of being like being a real, quote unquote, real black person. And again, that goes back to growing up in predominantly white spaces. Quinn is at a well-to-do school. Her mom is a lawyer, her dad is a doctor. So she's living life, right? And so she ends up getting paired with this cute black guy from her class named Carter. So the synopsis is she ends up losing her journal, and somebody starts blackmailing her and exposing her secrets and all this other stuff. So anyway, we're gonna get back to that, but her whole thing is like she keeps all these lists of different stuff that she needs to do as a means of like therapy, as a means of like, you know, thinking, processing things. So she has a list of all these type of different stuff, like, girl. And first of all, she has all these lists about guys she likes, all this type of stuff. I learned this early. Never, 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 never keep a journal on you with the real names of the people. At least change their names, change their likeness. So if, you know, things go down, people don't know who you're talking about. Use code names, y'all, in your journals. But basically, her whole thing is she keeps track of when she has to cry and when she does her ugly crying. Y'all know what ugly crying is, but it's so relatable because she's the type of person that cries when she's mad, and I can relate to that and stuff. So they're working on a group project. So it's her, Carter, and this other white boy named Auden. They're working on a group project, and during the course of this group project, they end up going to Quinn's house, right? So Quinn lives in a big house. Her parents are have professional occupations, careers. And so Carter is in the house. The dad, he was looking like, why is this black person in my house? Mind you, the dad is black too. And this is something that is so, I don't know, it just hit me. Like, the dad, he was not comfortable in his own blackness, and that came through when he saw that young man in his house. He didn't know why that guy was there. He didn't even ask. He said, "What are you doing in here?" Like, he literally didn't really, he questioned him in a way that, you know what I'm talking about, like you're not supposed to be here type thing. And I think a lot of us have dealt with that feeling, that our blackness, feeling uncomfortable in blackness sometimes. Again, if you grew up in primarily white spaces, PWS, primarily white spaces, it can kind of damage your self-image in a way, I think. The only thing I gave this book a 4, only because I felt the dialogue was a little bit grown, but I don't know, do people at preparatory schools talk different from regular high school kids, or I don't know. So I felt the language was a little bit adult in ways, and kind of, I like the subject matter. It did remind me of the, the kind of upbringing like in the Black Kids book. So it was a whole thing. So the blackmailer ends up being one of her friends, and so this is my thing about this whole situation that she got into. First of all, the Carter guy, I don't know if he was trying to be her boyfriend because he was trying to get a come up, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, this dude is kind of like a broke Dusty because he saw her house and was all of a sudden like interested in her. So y'all let me know what you think. Do you think he was trying to get a come up off of Gwen just because she was rich and he was not? And then on top of that, when the girl Destiny, who was a part of the shenanigans, trying to get her caught up and all this other stuff exposed, she tried to apologize and come back, and I was like, if I was homegirl, if I was Quinn, I'd be like, no, we're not friends. I'd accept the apology, but I'm not gonna mess with you no more. And then I did like in the end when the dad, I like that Quinn faced her fears in the end, and she didn't let the bullies get to her. She faced her fears. She did what she got to do. She cleared up all the lies that she was going around with, and then also the dad kind of came back, kind of self-reflected, which I really appreciated. And he was like, he said something to the effect of, having Black friends makes you feel whole, and that is so real. Like, whenever I've been in a group of Black folks, when we're having a good time and we're just vibing and we're just enjoying each other's company, it's such a different feeling, y'all. If you grew up in primarily white spaces as a Black person, and you went to college or you went to a different, like a workplace or anywhere, or a concert even, where it's like just us in the space and we're vibing, it's a different feeling. Like, when it's love for real. So that really hit home for me, in terms of, I can relate to that. So this book gets a 4 out of 5. Good read. I think it's a little bit raunchy in some respects for young adult readers in some areas, but it's a good read, good audiobook to listen to. And yeah, that is, excuse me while I ugly cry. The next genre that I'm getting into is the horror genre, y'all. I'm not a horror girl, but I find myself getting into horror lately. I've been into the Junji Ito type of horror with manga, and then now I'm expanding my literature. I will say the 3 that I read were The Black Girl Survives This One, Weird Black Girls, and let me make sure I'm getting it right, The White Guy Dies First. So these are all like anthologies, stories, written by different authors, and they're all horror in nature. And let me give y'all this little tidbit. I don't know what's wrong with me, but I found myself, I didn't know if it was supposed to be horror or comedy, because I found myself laughing at some of these stories. I don't know if it's just the unserious Blackness. It's just the unseriousness for me. So I found myself laughing a lot at these stories because they were hilarious. Like, they were grotesque, but they were really hilarious to me. So let's start with The Black Girl Survives This One. Survives in this one. It's an anthology of horror stories with Black women as the main characters. Desiree S. Evans and Sarah. Okay, so The Black Girl Survives in this one is an anthology of horror-ish paranormal stories with black women as the main characters. This is by Desiree S. Evan and Sarasia. I hope I'm saying the name right. Sarasia J. Fennell. Sarasia J. Fennell. Again, y'all, I found most of the stories to be hilarious. And I blame this on the fact that black folks can't take nothing seriously. And it is a problem. This is supposed to be some serious, like, scary type stuff. But I couldn't stop laughing. I was at work. I listened to this during my work shift. And I was like, this is hilarious. So I thought this book was, even though it was a horror genre, I felt the black girl main character energy showcased our resilience and our creative thinking. I didn't feel like it was, you know, it showcased our resilience. Like, that's just who we are in general. But here are some of my favorite moments in this book. This is a couple of spoilers, but when Mary was the ghost and she was trying to keep Janine, that I was rolling. Then Latricia talking about how talking to Aja about her therapist, and then when she got free from the curse, that was real. When homegirl got free from the curse. Another hilarious thing was when Sam was listening to the bus driver's thoughts, and the bus driver was like, what if I just run this car into oncoming traffic? Baby, I was about to cackle in that job. They would have had me laugh. They would have me looking at me like, what is wrong with this girl? Then Queenium for Greenium. Y'all, listen, when you read this book, y'all are gonna be dying laughing. This mess is hilarious. I'm not even gonna lie, this mess was hilarious. And then the one story also had where the grandma made a generational blood curse. Now I felt like that was something, I don't know how y'all feel, but I believe in generational curses, and I believe that some of our ancestors put some generational curse on, so I felt that one for real. But that's a whole different topic. I feel like they also tied in some kind of, like, a lot of the diaspora communities still kind of have some traditions, and superstitions, even though we don't know, like, some of them we don't know consciously that these are from ancestral African heritage. We still have a lot of superstitions about how to break curses, how to do certain things that really resonates. Like, for example, Caribbean people talk about obia. Brazil, they have candomblé, I think it is, voodoo, voodoo. I don't know how they pronounce it, but in Haiti. And we all are connected still by some of these superstitions that are rooted in our African heritage, and I think that is a beautiful thing, and I think that's beautiful that the authors kind of tied in some of those elements into the story. But if you're a young adult reader, because this is also, they said, a young adult book, you may not know those kind of historical allusions to those things, but I think for older people, we can kind of see, you know, the connections there. I think some of the stories, again, were really grotesque, but I didn't feel a sense of fear. Obviously, I'm not a young adult, so maybe that's probably why. Maybe if I was a younger reader, I would feel more scared or anxious or something like that. But I gave this a 4.0 because I like the narration, and some of the stories made me laugh. The characters, and I like to see the black characters in this different kind of genre, because a lot of times when it's horror, when it's in mainstream media, the black person is like killed off, or the black person's supposed to be like, the support person, kind of helping the main character, though usually the white person, find their way, and that's like not what we're trying to do. So I love this book. Has main black girl main character energy, and yeah, we're here for it. So if you like horror in the genre, go ahead and get this book. It's not too bad. So the next horror story, that horror anthology that I read, was The White Guy Dies First. This was a good background book to listen to. I had it. I was invested, but I was not invested at the same time. And again, this book was more grotesque than scary to me. The story that had me most invested, I think it was the first story, but it was about this girl, Helen Interest. Okay, the whole story, I was like, now why would she do that? And the girl ends up gaslighting homegirl into murdering somebody. And then you find out it's a whole circus of murderers. I was like, no. Because homegirl got finessed into committing crimes. And that's what we not gonna do. So that was a whole thing. The fourth story about the indigenous boy, that had me shook. That was kind of gross. That was a little bit scary, but it wasn't scary to the point like fear. It was scary to the point that these things probably really happened. Like, y'all just have to read that story too. I appreciated the stories being about, black folks, queer folks, other peoples of color, and I appreciate that because, again, as I mentioned in the previous review of the previous book, you don't see a lot of that. And I think when black people tell stories, oftentimes we're confined to like certain genres, and it's like, no, all black people don't have the same interests. Some black people like horror, black people like comedy, black people like romantic, thing. So we're all our own people. Another one of the stories that the actual scary story was the story about the stalker girl. Y'all gonna have to read that because that was actually scary, and the girl was unhinged, and that stuff happens in real life, and that is, yeah. So that was interesting. What I thought about this particular anthology of stories, I thought I felt like this was a collective rage expression. They use the elements of horror to bring to light historical and present issues that are caused by white supremacy, the traumas, the rage and anger that a lot of us can't express on the regular as a result of these things, and it elevated our voices in a way that can often go unheard in some spaces. So there's a lot if you dig deep into these stories about generational trauma. I think that may not be the intention of the authors, but to me, a lot of these things and representations are just that. A lot of, just generational trauma caused by white supremacy and the lack of space for us to express ourselves in that avenue. So I gave this book a 3.5 because some of the stories I was just like, I didn't get it, so maybe I'll have to deep dive again into it to get it, but it was a good background book. I think what distracted me is that they had multiple different readers, and sometimes some people didn't, some voices don't portray the story as what I was expecting. So I don't know. I just gave it a 3.5. It's not bad. It's not good for me. But I do like the representation of black and POC voices in this genre. So if you're a horror, a scream queen, one of those people, go out and get the book. Okay, y'all. So this is the third horror. This is a horror sci-fi book. It's called Weird Black Girls, but it felt like more like a horror romance comedy. In this book, they had some adult themes like sex, drugs, and LGBT issues. Um, the first story was hilarious. There was a point in the book where they started singing. I was at work. I was trying to hold my laugh in. I was trying to hold my laughs in. It was these stories. Okay, again, I'm not even gonna lie. I was cackling at most of these stories. In the second story, the bathroom was up there talking to this man. And the person's name was Scalalala, and I was crying. Or something was named Scalalala, and I was like, listen, they finna have me. Oh my gosh, they finna have me cackling in this place. Sorry, y'all, I got my little drink so I can get through because I'm not used to talking so much. But so, and then there was another story. So all of these stories were hilarious to me. I'm just gonna put it out there. But there was one story with this girl named Tiff, and she she was really obnoxious. She had like no self-awareness. She was, I think her portrayal was supposed to be like a white liberal person. Just had no self-awareness. She was just everything like if you were talking about yourself, she would make it about her. Like, and there's so many people in the world like that they lack this. It's like their life trumps yours and they're always trying to overshow yours. I don't even know if it would be narcissism, but it might be. But that, I mean, she was just obnoxious. And then there was a story. So this dude, the dude was up there talking about, they were in the car talking, and the man had him up there drooling on himself. I was dead, y'all. I was so dead. Y'all gonna have to read this book because I don't want to give away any spoilers, but that book was hilarious. A whole time, and it was getting freaky. This was like, they had these parts where they was getting freaky in the book. And I was like thinking to myself, I'm like, I hope nobody in this place is connecting to my Bluetooth or my iPhone, because baby, they would have had to send me to HR because that mess was some freaky stuff, y'all. I was in there. Oh my gosh. I don't know. The stories, the stuff they was saying in the book was hilarious. And I don't know why this stuff was so funny to me, because it was supposed to be scary and it was supposed to be like sci-fi and out of this world kind of stuff, and it was just giving me comedy. The only thing I didn't like about these books was that sometimes I couldn't tell the voices of who was the black girl and who wasn't, so I was kind of confused there. But overall, I'll give it a 3.7 just because it made me laugh. Anything that makes me laugh, I'm rating you. Again, I'm not a horror genre person, so I don't know. I'm not invested fully into that, so that's why I've kind of picked and choose most of the things that made me laugh, because I'm kind of a comedy kind of girl. But if you're into the horror, sci-fi, go out and get these books. One thing I'm gonna always do is I'm gonna always recommend the books no matter what, because everybody's opinion is different. So while I might not have found it interesting or whatever the case may be, you might love it. So try these books no matter what my rating is. You and me are two different people, so go get the book if you want to. Okay, so this was a short, this is going to be the only one in this genre. This is called Kin by Carol Boston Weatherford. This is a poetry book, poetry prose book. It is a historical fiction, and I didn't know what to expect. I don't think I was ready for this kind of topic because it was mostly regarding slavery and racism and things like that. So, colonialism, racism in the theme. So, if you're sensitive to that, just be aware, be ready, mentally to listen to those kind of stories. I didn't know what to expect, and I don't know if it was what I expected, but it was heavy on the trauma and sensitive subject matter. I do love poetry, I do love prose, so I'm gonna give this a 4 just because. But again, with the subject matter, y'all need to be aware and be ready mentally to read these kind of things. So that is Kin by Carol Boston Weatherford. It's a short listen. It was like under 3 hours. So if you need something to break up the monotony of your reading list, go ahead and get like one of these short poetry books, audiobooks, and that can get you kind of into a more creative mindset, I think. So the next genre we're going to touch on is the self-help, finance, kind of get your life in order kind of books that I listened to this past 2 months, November, December. The first one was What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Oyama. The next one is A 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And the third one is The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. So starting with the 4-Hour Work Week, I've heard of this book many times when I've watching YouTube, seeing other people talking about entrepreneurship and things like that, trying to get out of the rat race deal. So I was excited to listen to this book. So the synopsis of the book is there's a group of people called who the author refers to as the new rich, who are rejecting the social norms of, what it means to exist in terms of working by reclaiming their time and escaping the rat race. So this book is giving tips on how to escape that 9-to-5 rut, trying to give you those tips and tricks that the so-called new rich are doing versus the people that are set in being in the matrix. So he's saying you should have fun now, live like you're a millionaire. Learning how to shift your resources, learning how to use what you have to get what you want, essentially. And then disdain for, he was talking about a lot of the new rich have disdain for authority, which I can relate to because I hate the idea of having to be told what to do, even though that's the whole premise for work. Like when you work for somebody else, they make the rules. This stuck out to me a lot. This concept that he was talking about, having the ability to choose is a real power in today's society. So if you think about what the wealthy do, they have the ability to choose when they start their day. They have the ability to choose how much they work. They have the ability to choose what they want to buy and what they want to eat, and these things that are, if they want to go to a nice restaurant, they go. There's no how much is it, these questions that people who are not living that kind of lifestyle would ask. And I think this book is kind of outdated because I think some of the concepts were, I think this was written originally in 2007. Let me just fact check that. Hold on, y'all. Work week, they'll figure it out. The 4-Hour Work Week, original publication date. So yeah, it was originally published in 2007. So some of the concepts are a little bit, I feel like outdated, but they can be applied. I like that he was saying the idea of risk taking. Like, a lot of us see certain things as scary, we're scared of it, but he was saying that risks aren't that scary once you do them. So if you can recall a time that you were scared to do something and you did it anyway and you found out it wasn't that scary, that's what he's talking about. So what we're talking about is in terms of risk. Maybe in your career you're scared to do a new thing, or you're scared to create a business. It's like, is it really that scary, or are you just thinking it's scary? It's just different, it's just new. And then let me see, I like the idea that they said to create dream lines. I really like that idea of having a dream line. When you get the book, you'll learn more about what dream lines are, but I don't want to give away too much of the book because I want you guys to go out and read these books for yourself if you're interested in what they're talking about, because a lot of these books have different good tips and advice, and what I take away from it might be different from what you take away from it. So what I learned from this is about positively manipulating your reality, to positive manipulation to alter your reality and to get the results in life that you want. And I think this is a good book to read or to listen to when you have time. Just put it on maybe in the background and jot down some notes that you receive from it. And I think this book can be really helpful for people like myself who want to go against the grain of the regular 9 to 5, the humdrum, who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to do something different from what we were told to do. Now, mind you, this is not, for me, I'm not thinking when I read this book, oh, let me go quit my job and run away and do that. No, I'm gonna do what I gotta do until I can do what I want to do. And so that's the important thing. I gave this a 4. I just need an updated version. I think that's the only reason why. I would like to see what the updates are as far as applying it to modern day times where there's AI and different things like that, where you can utilize Bitcoin and things like that. So I think that would be interesting to see how they can update, make those updates. The next book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I don't know what the hell happened to all my notes for that book. I'm not even gonna hold y'all, so I'm kind of winging it. This is a self-help book that, let me see if I can find my notes, y'all. Give me 1 minute. So if I can't find out notes, y'all, but, so, y'all, I'm at a loss because I don't know what I did with my notes for The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, but this book is another self-help book / memoir from Mark Manson, and he's basically going through telling you what to give and take and let go, and things like that from life, and how not to take things too seriously, take things too to heart, in terms of what we keep our focus on. And I found this book to be a good book to listen to in terms of, just basic advice in not getting caught up in the minutia of life, right? So a lot of us, I think, we're focused on certain things, and the goal of this book is to get you to not focus on every little detail of things. Kind of be choosy about what you focus on in life. Like, for example, if somebody's being petty towards you, maybe you don't focus on that. Maybe you focus on the people that are kind to you. Maybe you don't focus on the failed grade that you had in school, but you focus on the things that you are good at in school. So I would say this is a book about mindfulness, being mindful in a different kind of way. It's kind of brash, it's kind of, blunt, it's kind of vulgar in a way, but Sometimes that's what people need, for you to get the point. But I will give this book a 3.5 because, I mean, I think with the title alone, I feel like this is during that time when people try to be rebellious in their writing and use like the, swear words and how to be this and how to be. So that's the only reason why, because I'm like, is it cringy? A little bit, but is it good advice? Yes, on the inside, yes, it's very good advice. So that was a different time in writing. Writing, if you know, you know. If you remember when people started doing that kind of stuff. So that's by Mark Manson. Again, 3.5 for that book. The next book, I'm gonna just say right off the bat, it's a 5 for me. It's a 5 for me. I didn't even know I would love this book so much when I read it. It is called What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Oyama. The translation was by, let me see. Girl, what is this? Hold on. Okay. So the book was translated by Allison Watts. Sorry, y'all. I'm trying to look at my notes as well. Okay. Okay, so I was gonna do this review a while ago as an individual standalone review, but I never got around to it and I wanted to redo it. So y'all are getting it in the compilation. So this book tells about 5 stories, 5 individuals at different points in their life, who are struggling to kind of find meaning. And so there are the 5 people, they're all kind of in the same neighborhood, but they don't know each other exists, and they're all linked through this one library community center. So there's a young woman in her 20s, a career man in his mid-30s, a new mother, a loner slash outcast type of guy, and a retiree. Okay, so they live in this community, and they're linked unknowingly through this community center that houses this library. The librarian plays an integral role in helping them to kind of find what they need, unintentionally, but in a way, I feel like it's intentionally through her book recommendations. And I don't know really if this book is like meant to be a self-help book, but I thought it was really just that, like in a subtle way. And it's very Japanese communication style, right? So when I was learning about communication style for the study abroad program, they were teaching us about the high contextual versus low context communication styles, and Japanese is very high contextual. It's suggestive. They're not gonna flat out tell you what is going on, but that is like very much how this book presents. It's very suggestive. It's not like, okay, so you need to do this, this, and this, and this to improve your life. But the librarian, let me find her name real quick. So the librarian, Miss Komachi. She gets everybody together through her book recommendations, and they don't really realize that she's just recommending these books just because, allegedly, apparently that's what she said at the end of the book. But the idea is, the whole idea of the book is connection, or at least what I took away from it. The idea of the book is connection. And ironically, the readers have been brought together because in the story, Miss Komachi is eating these cookies called honey dome cookies, and this is like the theme. So she has a box of honey dome cookies that she keeps. her, what do they call it? It's not stitching. It's like when you do the little pin cushions and you make stuff. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a craft where you make little stuff by pushing the needle, and it like makes a figure. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a little craft thing, patchwork type of thing. And so that's what she does, and that's where she keeps her supplies in that honey dome cookie box. So we as the reader are like gaining interest. Like, I literally thought these cookies were real. So if you read this book, you gonna know, this is a spoiler, these cookies aren't real. And people are on Reddit trying to figure out the recipes of these cookies and trying to find something similar to these cookies because they're not real. And that's the beauty of it. It's like we're brought together by this idea of something that's not even real, but we are all seeking that same thing through that, and we are all connecting through that with our similar like-minded thinking of, let me get some of these cookies to try them, and they're not real. But I think as Westerners, a lot of us are trained to be individualists, like very individualistic, and that's what creates a lot of the kind of loneliness in Western society. We are hyper independent. We're focused on getting for self, whereas other communities are not like that. And I think this book is kind of reminding us that in order to exist, we have to have community. I thought this was a beautifully written book. I wish I could read it in Japanese, but even in English, the storytelling was really good. I read it on Amazon Kindle, which I got it for free because I had made some purchases before and I got some points. So I didn't even know what this book was about. I just happened to get it because I had like $3 in Amazon money, and I was like, let me go ahead and buy this. And it turns out I really love the stories, and it's very relatable, because especially the 20-year-old and the 30-year-old career person, because in your 20s you're so lost and you think sometimes you think things are really meaningless, and I found that very, very true to life. Like, sometimes you don't know which direction you're going. So I give this book a 5 out of 5 just because of that, and how they were able to connect everybody in real life, based off of these honey dome cookies. So it's a cute story. It's a cute book. Cute, nice illustrations. I really like the illustrations in there as well. So that also was very much a plus for me. I'm very much a visual person. So any book that has some kind of illustration, I'm probably gonna give it a 5. So that was a 5 out of 5, y'all. So let's move on to the next genre. Not least, because if you made it this far, I got a little surprise for y'all at the end of this book reviews, so y'all stay tuned for that. But we're moving on to the memoirs. The most recent book I just finished this today, actually, is called All Boys Aren't Blue, and this is by a queer Black individual, I would say. It's a memoir about their life. I believe they're non-binary. George M. What is his last name? What? Now how I forgot the boy name. Hold on. Okay, so the actually most recent book that I actually finished today was called All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. They are a queer Black creative writer. They grew up in Plainfield, New Jersey, in a middle-class Black family, very close-knit, very much, educated, smart family, small town. this is a memoir, so they're telling their life story about their identity. So it deals with topics such as sexual trauma, um, early childhood trauma, sexual trauma, and LGBTQ issues, identity issues of that nature. So early on, George Johnson goes through this, like, was born into an identity crisis. First of all, the family had a lot of secrets surrounding their name. There was issues at birth when they were determining the gender, the sex, and all of these just different issues that came up as far as identity. And this is something I believe the author struggled with throughout their whole life, as far as they came into the world with these crises. And I think that's very much relatable in Black families. There's a lot of random secrets that don't make any sense. And when you find out, you're like, why? It just don't make no sense. But the idea of the author has to code switch a lot, the author has to mask a lot, has to hide the feminine characteristics of who they are, being assigned as a male at birth, being once you're assigned male or female at birth, you're automatically categorized. It's like our society exists only in our society only exists in binaries. So you're either male or female, you're this or that, and there's no room for, a lot of times there's no room for any gray area, especially when it comes to sexual identity. And people want a definitive answer, like, are you this or are you that? And it's like, why does it matter to you? So this author brings up these kind of issues that I'm gonna use he, just because at the time of the story, that is how people identified George M. Johnson, and I'm not quite sure how the author. Sorry, y'all. So my camera died, so I had to put my phone on the charger and get back to y'all. So excuse the angle. We're gonna try to push through this and finish these last two books. So yeah, George M. Johnson grew up with all these different all these issues surrounding identity and dealing with a lot of trauma. There's interfamily trauma, there's molestation, things like that a lot of families don't talk about, like, and there's not a safe space to even talk about, and even to talk about gender identity and how you feel as a young person. There's not often a safe space for young people to address those things, and the author does a good job at addressing all of those things. That obviously this is his life story, this is their life story. At the time that this book was published, the author apparently was using he, him, but now they are using they, them pronouns, so I'm gonna go ahead and respect that. So they went through a lot of issues. The good thing about the author's family was that they had a lot of people who were LGBTQ in their family, and this allowed them to have a supportive family, and you don't see that quite often. So in the book, George M. Johnson goes over how their family was really supportive once they did come out and claim their identity, and I think that's a really beautiful thing in terms of what we don't see in a lot of modern society right now. And they had a cousin by the name of Hope, who was transgender actually, who ended up passing away, which I literally wanted to cry. I was at work though, but I couldn't cry at work. Obviously, I feel my eyes watering, but just the idea of them respecting Hope's transition as well. Because back in those days, when the author was coming up, that wasn't common, like, for people to be accepting of, you know, transgender people in their family or even gay people in their family. So I think this book is really important as far as representation. There are some very much heavy topics as far as the abuse and, you know, intercourse related things, but the author is just being real. This is their story, so as we respect their story, right? So just be advised, if you are allowing a young person who is struggling with sexual identity, sexuality, or transitioning to read this book, there are some pretty heavy topics that the book touches on. So all in all, I would give this book a 4/5. I love that the author was reading the actual book. I love when the author reads the audiobook, and just the idea of representation and the whole, the storytelling. And obviously this is real life. I love memoirs, so I'm gonna always give a memoir a good rating. So 4/5 from me. Anyone who can relate to queer identity issues, things like that, you're gonna want to pick up this book. This is a good read. All right. Okay, so the last book that I'm going to be reviewing is called Last Night at the Viper Room. And this book is about River Phoenix. If you don't know who River Phoenix is, he was an actor. He's the brother of Joaquin Phoenix, who played in The Joker, and he starred in one of the most well-known movies that I know him from was Stand By Me. It's a coming-of-age movie from I believe, the 90s. So if you've never heard of River Phoenix, go ahead and look him up. So Last Night at the Viper Room, River Phoenix and the Hollywood He Left Behind. This is by Gavin Edwards. So this book is really actually a sad story about his life, as far as he grew up in a cult, and this is a well-known cult called the Children of God. That's a whole nother story. If you're interested in those kind of stories or those kind of things, look up the Children of God cult. It was a really disgusting, really nasty group, and I don't know if they're still going today, but this book was the epitome of a Hollywood lifestyle. It was the sex, drugs, fast lifestyle, and unfortunately the dying young of these individuals. Like River Phoenix died young, but it's that fast lifestyle. It makes Hollywood seems otherworldly. If you've never been to like the Hollywood Strip or like LA, I don't know, it's like being in a funhouse mirror, or looking into in one of those mirror houses at the carnival. Like, everything is distorted when you're thinking about it. Like, how you look at things becomes distorted. Your mind can become distorted, and if you're not careful, you can get lost in that kind of lifestyle. Like, I've only been to LA once, and some of the people, everybody's supposedly somebody over there. I met a lady who was so into the stars, and she was friends with so and so and so and so, but she was nobody, really. I mean, she was somebody, but she wasn't known. So it was like, everybody wants to be somebody, I should say. So there's some sensitive issues in this book. Him growing up in a cult, they were sexually assaulted. They grew up poor. They grew up impoverished. They had to beg and do different things and play music for money, and pushed by their father and get they basically were busking for money when they were in Venezuela, and the cult was exploiting women. They had what was called flirty fishing, which was really disgusting when using the women to attract these men and get money and things like that. A lot of the actors we know today were mentioned in this book, like DiCaprio, Depp, those kind of people. Not in a negative way, but just as they were coming up, they were talking about how they were starting to get roles and how they started to kind of all of them intertwined with River Phoenix's life. From what I read in this or listened to, he was really described as very like a pure soul type of person and very innocent. And if you know Hollywood, that ain't for the innocent. Like, he was really trying to spread messages of love, and being from his upbringing, being sheltered, the world doesn't really embrace that kind of person, right? The world will actually chew up and spit out people that are very much loving and genuine and those kind of things. They moved a lot. Their family unit was distrustful of society and systems, which they were rightfully so, but at the same time, Hollywood is not. Yeah, that's a different system in itself. So if you're mistrustful of society, how can you be trustful of Hollywood and what goes on there? I would say, like, River Phoenix, his whole, his outlook on life was he wanted to change the world. And I don't know, that's kind of again, it's a wholesome idea. It is very pure, but is it doable? For the society that we live in, people are very much set in it's like Sodom and Gomorrah out here, y'all. If you know the biblical reference to Sodom and Gomorrah, you know how it is. I don't think, I'm not going to rate this book simply because it's not him depicting his life, but it's somebody else depicting his life. And unfortunately, we can't get his side of things due to him having passed away. But I respect, the life that he did live. He did leave a legacy behind because people often talk about him, and I believe that they remember him in a good light, regardless of the issues he had. One of those being getting caught up in the drug life, the parties, drugs. But that book is a must read if you're somebody who likes film and you're someone who likes to read biographies, memoirs, autobiographies. Go out and read that book. It's very telling, and it's very unfortunate how he had to pass away. But yeah, that's what I'll say. Okay, so this is the bonus section. If you made it through all those other reviews, this is the bonus part because, y'all, in 2025, I plan on getting back into the indie film game. When I was after college, I was big into indie film. I was big into the film festival scene, y'all, and 2025, we're going to be getting back into that because film is such an important part of writing and of the visual part, because I used to be into photography deep as well. So for me, it holds a special place in my heart. So y'all, this past Christmas, I decided to get back into indie film and watch a movie that many of y'all will know. It's called Queen and Slim, and the screenplay was written by Lena Waithe. If you don't know her, you should. But Lena Waithe is a queer black creator, writer, producer. She's she's been on many things, so look her up. And the reason why I got back interested into indie film is because of the song, the closing credits song by Lauren Hill, Miss Lauren Hill, Guarding the Gates. It happened to pop up into one of my Spotify playlists, and that just sparked my interest into the movie once again. So that is why. So it was originally released in 2019. It's a romance thriller. And y'all, before I actually watched the movie, I didn't know what it was about. I thought it was some kind of like feel good movie, like I thought it was kind of like maybe like a Moonlight, something like that, to that effect, which I really love Moonlight as well. But this movie stars well-known people. Y'all already know Daniel Kaluuya. He was also in Judas and the Black Priest. Is that it? I don't know, but Daniel Kaluuya, he played Fred Hampton. Bokeem Woodbine, y'all know him. He's like the evil Chappelle, I guess they would say the evil looking Chappelle. Y'all already know him. Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Jodie Turner-Smith. So y'all know Jodie Turner-Smith. She's married to the guy from Dawson's Creek, Joshua Jackson. So if you know, you know. If you don't, look it up. But this movie, again, like I said, I didn't know what to think. Let's give you a synopsis first. So basically, what happens is it's a young black couple. They meet up on their first date. They end up getting into a debacle where they end up killing a police officer, and they go on the lam. Now, I think these people didn't know each other from Adam, and they just kind of grew into each other over the course of their escape. So, y'all, why I didn't know what it was about, and I felt some kind of way because it brings up a lot of the topics and issues that we deal with as black people in modern society. Police brutality, killing of unarmed black people, the escalation of simple things like a traffic stop, because that is what happened to them. They were in a traffic stop. The police officer escalated the situation, and he ended up getting shot, and they had to, deal with that. But I'm kind of torn between everything because it's an awareness kind of a video, like movie, because it's bringing awareness to those topics, but it also brings awareness to the fact of how in the black community there's so many other dynamics. You have people that agree with certain things, who are very conservative, who are very much for the action. They're about that action, they're about the movement. Spoiler, like in the one scene where the young boy kind of follows in their footsteps, I did not agree with that, because we can understand that not all people are bad because they are police officers, but there is a stigma about those who are good, that the bad outweighs the good, essentially, in those circumstances. And so the young man made that error, and that really had me feeling some type of way because he was influenced by their actions to do that. And then in the end, towards the end of the movie, I was like, well, first of all, I was like, okay, this is some struggle up here. This is really some struggle up, because baby, ain't nobody finna have me on the run from no law. I do not want to be on the run for no law, for no love. But in the end, I found myself rooting for them, and I'm like, yes, they finna make it. Spoiler, they don't. And this is another topic in the black community of us selling each other out for the coin, and that really, at the end of it, when they played the closing credits, the Lauryn Hill song "Guarding the Gates," I was ugly crying because that really, like, I don't know, something about that movie just hit me in my feelings because it's like they got all that way just to not make it, and I really felt some type of way about that. So y'all, I give that movie, since a movie, I'm gonna give it a 9.5 out of 10. I really liked it. I was kind of conflicted between the topics, um, and how do we even handle those things like in real life, because of the system that we are in. Justice will be served if you handle it in a vigilante way. It's just, and again, look at what we're dealing with in modern times. We have vigilante justice, we have people, it's like Gotham City out here, y'all. So that movie really had me in my feelings. I really liked it. It's called Queen and Slim, starring Daniel Kaluuya and Jodie Turner Smith as the main characters. So y'all, let me know if you watched it. I told y'all that was my little special thing that I was gonna add to the end of this book review. I feel like movies are just visual books, so y'all can fight me on it, but that's what we're doing. So stay tuned for more book reviews in 2025. Stay tuned for more life updates. Stay tuned for more indie film and just general film reviews, because that's what we're coming with. So y'all have a safe and happy new year. Peace, one love. Bye.